Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyid al-Mursaleen Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum bi rahmatika nastaghith aslih lana shu'unana kullah wa la takilna ila anfusina tarfata 'ain. This is the fourth virtue of seeking the knowledge of Asma'ullahi Ta'ala wa Sifatih from the book of Shaykh Abdur-Razzaq al Abbad, which is entitled Fiqh al-Asma' al-Husna. And the Shaykh in this chapter, in the previous chapters, we talk about what connection do you have with Tawhid, why the Anbiya and the Rusul were sent, how can we categorize their call with Tawhid. And in the previous lesson we looked at how the person in the dunya lives with the name of Allah and attributes. And in this one, in this chapter, chapter number 4, is as if the Shaykh is talking about how you can build your personality and your character around the names and the attributes of Allah. How can it become part of you, the names and attributes? And he's going to give you 8 or so steps on how to make it part of you. So the Shaykh begins this chapter by saying, Inna al-ilm bi asma'illahi wa sifatihi ilmu mubarak. It is a very blessed knowledge, and mubarak, something which has baraka. It is something which brings about a lot of virtue. So sometimes somebody might say that they have £10 in their pockets, but there's barakah in it, meaning it's gone a long way. It's something you may perceive as being something little or limited, but its benefits have been expanded. And barakah is of different types. Another example of how barakah can be expanded is in your life span. Allah says in the Quran, Inna anzalnahu fi laylatul qadr wa ma adraka ma laylatul qadr laylatul qadri khayrun min alfi shahr. One night is better than 83 years or so of worship. It shows that every single one of us have an opportunity of barakah, and especially in the summer month where the night may be 4 hours, 5 hours long. 5 hours of worship, or maybe even less than that, can equate to 80 or so years of worship. This is barakah, how 5 hours can turn into 83 years. Kathir al-awa'id, Ghazir al-fawaid, that its benefits and its implications are plenty and innumerable. Mutanawwi' al-thimar wal-athar, and its virtues and its effects and its fruits are plentiful and vast. It's not just limited to one kind of benefit. So how we can get this kind of virtue in our lives are from the following few ways. And like we said before, the Shaykh is going to mention about 8 or so different ways on how we can benefit and how we can make it part of our lives, how we can make it personal to us. Number 1, he says, أن هذا العلم أشرف العلوم وأفضلها وأعلاها مكانة وأرفعها منزلة وشرف العلم من شرف معلومه ولا أشرف وأفضل من العلم بالله وأسمائه وصفاته الوارد في كتابه العزيز وسنة رسوله الأحي وسنة رسوله الكريم صلى الله عليه وسلم. ولذا فإن الاشتغال به والعناية بفهمه اشتغال بأشرف مطلوب وأجل مقصود. To summarize what he said here is like what we said before. The level of respect and honor and veneration you get from that thing depends on how much, the benefit that you get from that thing depends on the level of respect and veneration that you give from it from within. This is the first step. So he said that if you know that it's the most beneficial and the most noble of knowledges, and it is what the whole Quran is about, It's the very reason why Allah sent His messenger. Then engaging in this act of worship and this act of, or this particular discipline, would give you enough motivation in itself, because you are venerating and respecting that thing. If you don't see it in this way, then you're not going to venerate it. If it's just something that, maybe it's a bit extreme, but if you just say if it's something that you see in a newspaper or something that you just see in passing or doesn't really mean anything to you, then you're not going to give it veneration. If you're not going to give it any veneration, then it's not going to have any impact on your life. Step number 1, give it respect and give it veneration. Step number 2, أن معرفة الله وعلم به تدعو إلى محبته وتعظيمه وإجلاله وخشيته وخوفه ورجائه وإخلاص عمل له. Having Tawhid of Allah and having knowledge of Him means we must have, number 1, love, veneration, submissiveness, hope, fear, and sincerity. Knowledge of Allah and His Tawheed means we must have, number 1, love, number 2, veneration, number 3, fear, number 4, hope, and number 5, I think I mentioned fear twice before, and number 5, sincerity. Number 5, sincerity. Love, veneration, fear, hope, and sincerity. And Shaykh Abdur-Razzaq says that the more the heart is filled, or the more the knowledge you have of these 5 different aspects, or have of Tawheed with these 5 different aspects, and then you know that He is Rahman, and you love Him because He is Rahman, you submit to Him because He is Rahman, you have veneration to Him because He is Rahman, you have hope in Him because He is Rahman, but you also have fear in Him because He is Rahman. Yes, He's beneficent, but He gives punishment to people because He is Rahman, because it's justice. That's Rahmah, to bring people to retribution. And you have ikhlas in Him because He is Rahman. All of these 5 components, if you take it for each name and each attribute, it will give you total Islam in your life. It will give you total Islam in your heart, in your life, and you as a slave will be subservient to His Sharia. Because this is what you love. You love Him, you're submissive to Him, you have hope in Him, you have fear in Him, and you have ikhlas to Him. You're not seeking anything else. So this is step number 2. You fill your life and your connection with the names and attributes of Allah with these 5 aspects: love, hope, fear, submissiveness, and ikhlas. Step number 3. The third step that he mentions is that Allah loves His own names and attributes. Allah loves His own names and attributes, and He loves for those names and attributes to be part of the personality and the characteristics within His creation. So He loves it to be inside of you. He loves it to be inside of me, because He Himself is qualified of those names and attributes. And those names and attributes are names and attributes of perfection. And He loves perfection. He loves justice. He loves what is correct. So the only way that we can be right and upright and correct is that if we learn from His names and His attributes. Some of those names and attributes are exclusive to Him. So for example, He is Witr, He is Rahman, and etc. He is Allah, He is the Rabbul Alameen. But some of these names can be shared and we can benefit from them. So internally, we can benefit from those names and those attributes. So He is Jameel, Yuhibbul Jamal. He is beautiful and He loves beauty. So He loves beauty in appearance, He loves beauty in our actions, He loves beauty in our statements. He is Alim and He loves the ulama. He is Alim and He loves those people of knowledge. He is Al-Jawad and he loves Al-Jud. So He is generous and He loves generosity. He is Qawi. So He loves those people who are strong in their Iman, strong in their ability to do things. He is Hay, which is he is bashful or shy or reserved. And He loves those people who are reserved. He is a Tawwab and He loves those people who make Tawbah. He is a Shukur and so forth. The Shaykh carries on to give many examples. He is Rahim, He loves those people who have mercy. He is Afu and He loves those people who pardon. He has justice. He is just, so He loves those people who are just. And it continues. And all of these names and these attributes are plentiful, as Shaykh Abdur-Razzaq said, and all of them create a level of perfection in the person. The more he knows of Allah about them, the more better he will be in his personality and his characteristics. And these are the inner forms. And there are also the outer forms where Allah says, Allah yuhibbul muhsineen, Allah yuhibbul muttaqeen. These are all external actions. Allah yuhibbul mutatahhireen, etc. So these are all actions externally. So the love of Allah can be gained, or the love of Allah and His names and attributes can be gained from you as a personality, the more you have knowledge of Him. And then in your actions, the more you learn what pleases Him, and that becomes befitting for you also. The fourth step the Shaykh gives here on how to benefit from the names and attributes of Allah in your own self. أَنَّ اللَّهَ خَلَقَ خَلْقٍ, that Allah has created the heavens and the earth. Before that, billions of years before me and you sitting here listening to this, Allah told the pen to write, and the pen wrote everything that will occur until Yawm al-Qiyamah. And part of what he wrote, or what the pen wrote, was my name and your name. And they wrote this very action that we are doing right now. And after that writing, Allah created the heavens and the earth. And after He created the heavens and the earth, He told the angels that I am going to create man. And after He said I'm going to create man, the angels were bewildered. They wanted to know the reason why He wanted to create man. And Allah says, I know what you do not know. So it is as if all of this series of creating a pen, creating the heavens and the earth, having a Lawh al-Mahfuz, having the angels who are very close to Allah become inquisitive, is because of the veneration that's been given to Adam and his progeny. And the reason why he's been created, why Allah created Adam and his progeny and put them on this earth, as He says in Surah Dhariyat, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. The whole reason why Allah has created all of man, all of jinn, is that we worship Him. But the ayah doesn't stop there, the context doesn't stop there. مَا أُرِيدُ مِنْهُم مِّن رِزْقٍ وَمَا أُرِيدُ أَن يُطْعِمُونَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الرَّزَّاقُ ذُو الْقُوَّةِ الْمَتِينُ. Look at the end of this context. Allah ends with, He is Al-Razzaq and He is Dhu Quwwa and He is Al-Mateen. He is the one who provides. He is Allah. Inna Allah Huwa Razzaq. So there's another attribute here. He is Al-Razzaq. Dhu Quwwa, ever strong, ever powerful. Al-Mateen, again strong and powerful, but that strong and power now means that there is no kind, mateen is the opposite of any kind of weakness being entered into it. And mateen is completely solid. There is no gap, there is no crack, there is no way that you can get through. That's the meaning of the name Al-Mateen. The point here is that Allah has created man so that we worship Him. And He ends the context of all of this for us to realize that He has these names and these attributes. And He's used these names and these attributes to nullify any other reason except that we worship Him. The proof of us being created to worship Him is used in the context with certain names and attributes that He has chosen to prove that our own existence on here is not to have rizq, is not to become strong, is not to become dominant on the earth, because that's what could happen when you're in the dunya. Rizq, power, respect and money. That's basically the glamour of the dunya. But that's what Allah is saying here. I'm not created you for these things. This is what befits Allah, not man. Man has been created to worship. The fifth point, so if you realize this, then you will realize that you will give again veneration to the names and attributes of Allah, and this will help instill in your characteristics and your personality. The fifth way the Shaykh gives is how it can improve you as a person and how you can incorporate the names of Allah and His attributes, is to realize that you have Iman, and your Iman is built upon 6 pillars, the belief of Allah. Iman billah wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rasulih wal yawm al-akhir wa qadr khayrihi wa sharrih. 6 pillars: the belief of Allah, His angels, His books, His messengers, the last day, and qadr, which is the good of it and which is the bad of it. But the very first one is to have Iman in Allah and His names and His attributes. If you don't have any of this, then you will not have any kind of Iman, number one. And number two, because then everything else befalls. If you don't have Iman in Allah, you won't have Iman in the angels, because He's the one who created the angels. You will not have Iman in the books, because it's from His knowledge, etc. But also, it would eradicate any sense of belief in the unseen. It would eradicate any sense of belief in the unseen. So knowing that you have Iman and it has these pillars, and if you connect Iman and those 6 pillars to the names and attributes of Allah, then you can implement that in your life. Then you have a life believing in the unseen. And when you believe in the unseen, you will realize that you need to get closer to Allah by knowing His names and His attributes. Because you can only have belief in the unseen through yaqeen, through certainty. It's not something that can possibly, Allah knows best, but scientifically be proven. Because the field of the unseen is outside our physical laws. It doesn't apply. The laws of physics don't apply to Jannah and Jahannam and the angels, etc. It's something we cannot, perceive per se. So it goes to a matter of yaqeen. It's a matter of spirituality and belief. But this spirituality and belief has been confirmed with the physical laws that we can see and observe. We talked about this before, that there's a correlation between the qadr al-kawni and the qadr al-shari. The qadr al-kawni is perfect. That means the shari is also perfect. So if the shari is perfect, that instills yaqeen even if we cannot understand it. All of this feeds the idea and the belief in Allah and His names and attributes. فكلما ازداد معرفة بأسمائه وصفاته ازداد معرفة بربه وازداد إيمانه وكلما نقص فمن عرف الله عرف ما سواه ومن جهل به فهو لما سواه أجهل. The more you have knowledge of Allah, the more you increase in Iman. The more you increase in Iman, the more you increase in certainty. And this is why Allah says in Surah Hashr, before He says, Wallahu la ilaha illahu alimul ghayb wa shahada wa rahman rahim, and then He talks about all of these names. Before that ayah, He says, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. Don't be like those people who forgot Allah and His names and attributes and His Tawhid. So they abandoned Allah and Allah abandoned them. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Those people are sinful, they're rebellious, they're corrupt. And then Allah talks about His names and attributes. So these people have become corrupt because of their lack of Iman. They become corrupt because of their lack of yaqeen. And because of their lack of Iman and the lack of the yaqeen, it has affected their connection with the names and attributes of Allah. And this is ayah number 19 in Surah Hashr. So the conclusion for this point number 5 is, if you abandon Allah, Allah will abandon you. That's the basic nutshell of it all. If you abandon Allah, He will abandon you. But if you incorporate His names and His attributes in your life, He will remember you. And this will strengthen your deen in the dunya, obviously, but more importantly, it will strengthen your connection with the ghaib and the unseen. And it will fill your heart with Iman in the entities found within the pillars of Iman. So belief in Allah and His names and attributes will create a firmer yaqeen in the angels. And it will create a firmer yaqeen in the books, firmer yaqeen in the messengers, and so forth. Number 6, أن العلم به تعالى أصل الأشياء كلها حتى إن العارف به حقيقة المعرفة يستدل بها بما عرف من صفات وأفعال على ما يفعله وعلى ما يشرع من الأحكام لأنه سبحانه لا يفعل إلا ما هو مقتضى أسماء وصفاته. The Shaykh is saying here that the 6th point that we know, or we create a connection between Allah and His names and attributes in ourselves, is we know that Allah, or we know Allah through His Sharia. We know Allah through His Sharia. So there's not a thing that happens in your life except that you somehow connect it to Allah and His names and His attributes. And the Sharia, Allah lahu al-khalqu wal-amr. Allah says that for Him is the creation, and for Him is the amr. And the ulama have said that the creation refers to here the qadr. He is decreed. So all decree belongs to Allah. And amr refers to His commands, and all of His commands are truthful. All of His commands are truthful. So if He's commanded you to do something, you know that it's true. You know that it is just. You know that it's virtuous for you. You know that it's full of hikmah. So anything that He's told you to do, for example, if He's told you go to the bathroom and say Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubuthi wal khaba'ith, enter with your left foot. If you trace that back to His names and attributes, this is something so simplistic will increase you in your iman and increase in your connection with Allah. Because He's the one who's legislated it. He's the one who's the most just. He is the one who's most wise. But if you increase, and obviously in your knowledge, then you will know that there are entities that are there in the bathroom, etc. And Allah is preventing you from this, from His mercy and from His love. So if you connect all of these ahkam, big or small, every aspect of your life, to Allah and His names and attributes, that will mold your character. And this is a point mentioned by Ibn Sa'di in his tafsir. He says, Ibn Sa'di, that all of the information that He's given to you is true. All of His commandments and His prohibitions are full of justice and wisdom. So for this reason, when the slave acts upon the book of Allah and he ponders upon it, then he realizes, or the sunnah of his Prophet ﷺ, then he realizes within himself that this cannot be created, or it cannot be sent except from Allah. Because something so rich in pondering, something so rich in contemplation, something so profound in benefit and preventing you from every single harm, great and small, in positive and negative, can only come from one true Lord who is able to explain this to you. Who is able to explain this to you. And all of this stems from the fact that there is none worthy of worship except Him. So if you realize that there is none worthy except Him, then He is the one who is the haqq. And from Him comes all clear haqq. And all of the dalil and all of the proof goes back to Him. So even something, this for me, even something that was simplistic, going into the bathroom, realizes that you trace it back to the haqq. Eating with your right hand, you realize that the opposite is bad for you. Spirituality, you're talking about your level of spirituality, you realize that you need to be different to Iblis and Shaitan, etc. That's number one. Number one actually is to follow the commandment of Allah and His Messenger. Number two, realizing that the shayateen in this manner. Number three, that if you behave like them, then you will end up being like them. There's so many benefits, there's so many things. Number four, this is the hand that you use in the bathroom, and this could affect your level of bacteria transmission, etc. There's so many hikmah and so much things that are found, and it's so profound in its message. It can only be from Allah, and it's the haqq, and He's the one who's explained the haqq. So once we trace back all of these ahkam, and no matter how big or small, if you send it back to, trace it back to Allah, and we realize that it's full of hikmah and rahmah and adl and maslahah for us all, then this will help you incorporate the names and attributes of Allah with full yaqeen in your life. Number 7, in how to create a connection between the names and attributes of Allah in your life and in your personality and your characteristics, is to know that Allah has names and attributes, and these names and attributes will be a cause of trade for you. Belief in these names and attributes is actually, if you look at it as if you can say this, if this is the correct terminology or correct example, and to Allah belongs the highest example, but it's as if it's a commodity that you want to get profit from. How so? Is if you know that the names and attributes are in your heart and you instill them in your heart, then what you are doing is this becomes your commodity, and you will only sell this commodity for Jannah. You have a commodity which you are building in yourself. It's as if a person he's a labourer and he wants to build a wall. Bit by bit he builds the wall. He gets cement, he gets sand, he puts a brick down, cement, sand, puts another brick down, until he gets maybe 100 bricks, maybe 1,000 bricks, maybe 1,000,000 bricks, and it becomes a huge wall. And then that person will say, listen, I've got the biggest wall in the world, what price is it worth? And then you will sell it for the highest price. And this is the same thing. If you build Iman and in the names and attributes of Allah in yourself, what that will do is it will create obviously a love and a connection and tranquility in your heart. But what you are doing with these names and attributes is you are not sacrificing anything except Jannah for it. You are not sacrificing anything except Jannah for it. But again, this goes back to what we said before. If you venerate something, then you're going to respect it and you're going to hold on to it. If you venerate something, then you're going to hold on to it and you're going to respect it. If you have the names and attributes of Allah as a knowledge within your personality, within your characteristics, then you don't want anything less than Jannah in recompense for that. Out of the mercy of Allah, of course. Nobody enters into Jannah based on their own virtues. Obviously it happens with the mercy of Allah. But what you want to do is to gain His love, to gain success, to stay away from His anger and His punishment, and to fill your heart with love of Allah, seeking Him, hope, fear, and to get closer to Him and to make Him happy and to give shukr for all the virtues and all the favours that He's given to you. So basically what this number 7, the way you can incorporate the names and attributes of Allah in your life, in your personality, in your characteristics, is that there is no compromise. Basically, You will not compromise in yourself the names and attributes of Allah. So if the belief of them and the implementation of them, if you give it that level of virtue and respect, then your target is Jannah. This is how it becomes part of your life. So your key to Jannah are these names and attributes. And the eighth one that the Shaykh mentions here, of different ways on how you can get closer, or how the names and attributes of Allah can become part of you and how you can benefit from it in your personality and characteristics, is to know that أن العلم بأسماء الله وصفاته هو الواقي من زلل, that the names and attributes of Allah will protect you from slipping. It will protect you from slipping, and it will open the doors of hope, and it will instill in you and aid you to have sabr, and it will eradicate from you laziness, and it will put inside of you a yearning of good deeds, of getting closer to Allah, of His Jannah. And it will also put inside of you a fear of disobedience and having the steadfastness being moved away from you. The names and attributes instilled in a person stops them from slipping up. It opens the door for hope. It instills or aids them to have sabr. It eradicates from them laziness, because they're driven, and it makes the person driven towards doing good deeds and getting closer to Allah, making them happy. And it also removes from them, or instills in them, a fear of disobedience and a fear of having the steadfastness being moved away from them. The names and attributes of Allah in your personality will enable a person to be shielded against the shaitan. So this is what he is doing by learning them. The biggest way that you can prevent shaitan is by having the names and attributes. And this is why the ulama have said Ayatul Kursi has more than 10 affirmations for Allah and 10 negations for Allah. Allahu la ilaha illahu al-hayyul qayyum la ta'khudhuhu, la negation, la ta'khudhuhu, nothing can overtake him, sinah wala nawm, lahu ma fi sama. And it continues. And this is why the hadith of Abu Hurairah, when he was looking after the mal, which was for zakat, shaitan came up to him, took something, and he said, shall I tell you, I'll give you some information that shaitan will completely be repelled by. The greatest ayah in the Quran, which is full of affirmation and negation. And the Prophet ﷺ said, the sadaqa wa huwa kadhoob, that outright liar spoke the truth. So this is what the Shaykh is saying here, Shaykh Abdur-Razzaq Hafidhahullah, that you have the names and attributes put in your life. Then what this does is it creates a barrier, and you become ever aware of that barrier. And what that barrier also does is it puts a barrier against you and what we can say depression. And the opposite of depression is what you yearn for, which is bliss and fruitfulness and all kinds of goodness. Wal ihsan, wa badl wal ihsan. So to conclude this chapter, the Shaykh says, فهذه جملة من الأسباب العظيمة الدالة على فضل العلم بأسمائه وصفاته وشدة حاجة العبد إليه. So this basically gives you 8 different steps on how the names and attributes of Allah are virtuous in His knowledge, and how they are extremely important for the slave, but ليس هناك حاجة أعظم من هذا, and that there is nothing greater that a slave needs to know than the knowledge of his master. Anything which is created will look towards its creator. Anything which is created will always be attributed to that creator. We do this in our dunya as well. Very nice phone, who made it? Very nice car, what are the guidelines around it, what are its features, who is the one who's placed it inside of it. And this is what we instinctively do all the time. And then what we also do is we ponder on how we can make this mobile phone better. So there are certain features right now. What are some of the things that this creator can put from his own intuition, his own intellect, his own inventory, what he has in his head? How can he incorporate that in his creation? So this is what he does. So he goes back to the blueprint, he goes back to the drawing board. Okay, this next time is going to become like this, next time. This is tadabbur. This is what the Shaykh is saying here. That when the person has that level of love and knowledge and connection with Allah, he knows he's the one who's created him. He knows he's the one who is his master and his king. He knows that he is the one who is the sustainer and the provider of all of his affairs, and he is the one who provides for him. Then he will also know that he is the one that he is not free from, just like this phone is not free from its maker. Everything always goes back to its maker, and that no rectification for this mobile phone can come, or no improvement can come from this phone except from the one who created it. So the next model will always be dependent from the creator. There's not going to be somebody else that's going to be able to make it in a better way or improve this particular model. And this is exactly what happens to the slave when it comes to his Iman, is that he becomes stronger in his Iman, he becomes more intellectual, he becomes a better person, he becomes better in his ibadah, he becomes stronger in his Iman, he becomes stronger in his connection, the more he knows that his Lord is one. وَلِهَذَا فإن هذا العبد من الصلاح والاستحقاقه من المدح والثناء إنما يكون بحسب معرفته. The level of praise that a servant can get is dependent on the level of how much he knows his Lord. The level of love a person can get depends on how much he knows his Lord. The level of closeness a person can have towards Allah depends all on how much he knows his Lord. And this all stems from how much he knows him, how much does he act upon him, and how much do his statements reflect his knowledge of Allah and his attributes. So if you want Allah to praise you a lot, then we have to start with knowing his names and attributes, incorporating that in our actions, in our mindset, and in our actions. You want Allah to love you, again the same thing. You want Allah to be close to you, again the same thing. And this is how the Shaykh concludes the 4th chapter when he's talking about the virtues, and it's as if he's saying that how to incorporate the names and attributes of Allah within your own personality and your own characteristics. I mean, this twist is from me, but it seems as if this is the 8 steps that he has given in this book, Fiqh al-Asma' al-Husna. Fiqh is understanding Asma' al-Husna. So it seems very relevant that this is what he has put. And in the next chapter, bi'idhnillah, chapter number 5, the Shaykh talks about iqtida asma' Allah li'athariha min khalq wa taqween, the effects of the names of Allah upon the creation and upon the whole of the universe and everything that occurs within it. Ask Allah again to make this a beneficial sitting for us all, and that He doesn't make this our last sitting. هذا والله أعلم وصلى اللهم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.